Hey guys, it's Meal Before Me, and I'm back with another food review. This time, we're checking out some frozen meals from two famous chefs, Gordon Ramsay and Guy Fieri. The meals popped up at my grocery at the same time, and I didn't know they existed, so I figured I'd give them a try. Normally, I share the website for the meals I review, but neither of them had one. All I found was a dedicated landing page promoting them on Walmart's website. It said the meals are available exclusively at Walmart, but that's not where I got them, so maybe they were exclusive when they launched back in 2023. One article I found about the launch said that Ramsay had 13 meals at the time, and another said Fieri had 4. My grocery only had 4 of each, so that's what I got. And I won't waste any more time because we're all here to answer one question. How does it taste? And I'm ready to find out, so let's get these heated up. To the table! As always with these grocery reviews, I'm going to show you the footage and tell you my thoughts over it. And I'll be rating these by taste and repeatability, meaning would I eat it again? Starting with Ramsay's lasagna with bolognese meat sauce. All of these follow the basic instructions of venting the film before microwaving, and times are based on an 1100 watt microwave as usual. By this point, you should know I'm using my 700 watt Kenmore, which is still trucking along after a decade. Simply put, this meal was delicious. Everything was well seasoned, the pasta had that nice chewy bite to it, and the sauce was thicker than I expected with a savory, beefy flavor, though there weren't any noticeable bits of meat. It leaned more sweet than acidic, which I prefer, but in a way that was still balanced. I could see what looked like diced onions, and instead of multiple noodles layered, it looked like one noodle folded over the ricotta inside. And the ricotta was very rich and present, so if you're not a fan of ricotta-style lasagna, you may be put off by that. This was the first thing I tried today, and it was my lunch, which is why I ate the whole thing. I only mention that so you don't assume that I finish stuff I love and don't finish stuff I secretly hate. It just depends on which one I choose to have as my meal at the moment. For reviews where I'm trying like 20 things, I'll usually pick one for my meal, then review a few more before wrapping it up for the day. Since this review only has 8 meals, you'll see me finish more of them because I mostly use them as lunch and dinner back to back. Anyway, long story short, would I eat this again? Absolutely. No notes. Next was the chicken Marsala. I was worried about this one when I saw how watery the sauce looked at first and when I saw the diced bits of chicken. They gave me the most frozen meal vibes out of anything, and that was still true when I tried them, because the chicken had that weird, solid, cubed texture. I'd much rather have had fewer larger pieces or just one slice of chicken breast. Thankfully, the meat faded into the background. The mushrooms were great, and while I like chicken Madeira more than chicken Marsala, I still liked this a lot. The sauce was creamy, not like watered down gravy, and I could see someone thinking it's too salty, but for me it was fine. So, for repeatability, would I eat this again? Yes. In fact, the richness of the sauce and the satisfying quality of the pasta were enough. They could have left the chicken out entirely, and I still would have enjoyed it. I could also tell this would hold up well as leftovers, unlike most of the frozen meals I try, where they not only taste more bland when reheated with a less pleasant texture, but their sauce becomes more watery and sometimes even separated. I don't knock them for that since they're single-serving meals meant to be eaten in one go, so the only reason I ever have leftovers is because I'm opening more than one of them at a time for reviews. I still think it's worth mentioning though when a meal doesn't get worse the next day or doesn't seem like it will, and this didn't. Another thing I noticed reviewing frozen meals is that the quality of the pasta makes such a huge difference. I think my Marie Callender's review was the most recent one where I thought the pasta was flavorful with perfect density and chew more often than other brands I've tried. But don't quote me on that because these reviews all blur together after a while. But the trend does seem to continue here. I've only had 2 meals so far and the pasta was notably the standout in both. I ate all of this one because it was my dinner. Next was the slow roasted beef and wine sauce with mushrooms, pearl onions, and potatoes. The bowl was damaged out of the box so you could see spillage, maybe from before it went in there, who knows, and I found it strange that the film wasn't consistent. This one had a thicker square film, while the others I tried had a thinner circular film, and one of the circular films had a little pokey pull piece, while the other one didn't. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but I reviewed this one the same day as the other, so I didn't eat the whole thing. Like I mentioned in my Marie Callender's review, I love making wine-based sauces, but the wine base is what turned me off about most of those meals. So my hope was that Ramsay would come through for me here and have a sauce I actually enjoy, and he delivered. Though I could argue he maybe went too far in the other direction, where the wine didn't impart any of its notes that much anyway, so it just tasted like a nice beefy pot roast. The potatoes were fantastic, the carrots were great, and the gravy tasted like the meat was roasted in it, not like it was just slapped on top. As for the beef, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that it's the most non-weird beef I've ever had in any frozen meal to date. It looks like what I'd grab from the grocery and cook without any weird processing. The bad news is that it was also the chewiest meat I've ever had in a frozen meal. I couldn't even get the fork through it, and before you say, that's because it's plastic, I use these plastic forks specifically because they're the right strength and dullness that if something causes them to break or they can't get through it, it's a sign that it's too tough for me, whereas regular silverware can mask that toughness by being stronger and sharper. I genuinely struggled having to bite down on this meat full force. It was like biting into a catcher's mitt. I had to chew multiple times to get through, and it wasn't one piece like that, it was every piece. So, repeatability for this one is clear. Would I eat it again? If they figure out how to make the beef tender, then yes. It was hearty and delicious. But if this is what I can expect to get every time, then no. Chewing rubber once was enough. Last for Ramsay was the shepherd's pie, and this was interesting. When it was frozen, the mashed potatoes looked more sparse, but they spread out in such an even way when heated that I almost confused it for cheese. It's like it melted across the bowl. Then I realized it did have cheese on top, so that's why it looked that way. I was able to lift up a piece of the mashed potatoes, which was nice, because usually with shepherd's pie meals, the mashed potatoes blend into the meat mixture, so it isn't like pie at all, where there's an actual layer of potato on top and a meat and veggie mix on the bottom. This one, the layers were distinct, probably because it was mostly potatoes with a thin layer of beef and veggies underneath, and I guess I can give my repeatability for this away early because this was fantastic. I'd even go so far as to say it was the best tasting meat I've ever had in a frozen shepherd's pie. The flavor profile was the best I've had, and the texture of the meat was a clean, distinct mince rather than mushy granules. As for the potatoes, the layer was thick, they were dense, and they tasted homemade with a buttery creaminess. It was a lot like when I make potatoes where I hand mash them, then smooth them out by adding cream or sour cream and melted butter, whipping them with my hand mixer, versus most of the other frozen meals I've tried where the potatoes taste like rehydrated powder. Basically, I can't see anyone not liking this, because this is exactly what I expect from a TV dinner shepherd's pie, but never get. Moving on, after a strong showing from Gordon Ramsay, we now head to Flavortown to see what Guy Fieri has to offer, and I'll say up front that these smelled amazing. First was the Sloppy Joe mac and cheese, and you can immediately tell the difference in their culinary personalities. This had both ground beef and pork in it, and it looked like the pulled pork mac and cheese bowl from whichever brand I tried. Except this had the cavatappi pasta I adore, which I discovered through doing these reviews. The cheese was very thick, and it was creamy even though it doesn't look like that on camera because I let it sit down to cool a bit, so I'm sure that thickened it up. There was also a big piece of meat that was obviously supposed to be separated, and the flavor didn't resemble a sloppy joe to me. It just tasted like seasoned beef, only with a pop of heat. I did see what looked like a few pieces of diced peppers, but I wasn't sure if it was hot peppers or bell, so I checked the box and it mentioned Monterey Jack cheese. It also listed a ton of ingredients I didn't taste, like sherry wine, and the flavor profile was so simple, I think they could have achieved it with a fraction of them. This was another one I ate fully because it was my lunch that day, and I'd say it was more mac and cheese forward than meat, so get it for that without expecting a bunch of sloppy joe anything. Just good homemade tasting mac and cheese with a little extra something. So, for repeatability, would I eat this again? Yes. Next was the lasagna with pepperoni. The film flap was already lifted on this one, so quality control on the packaging is a bit iffy for these, but I was happy to see only 3 pieces of pepperoni, because anything more than that would have been too much. I do like pepperoni on its own, I just don't like it in things. I don't even like pepperoni pizza, because pepperoni's flavor is so strong and distinct that it overrides the nuance and complexity of everything else. I lose the cheese, the garlic, the yeast in the bread, everything just tastes like pepperoni. And that's what I expected to happen here. But I didn't expect this taste. This was way too salty, and it had a distinct metallic nitratey taste that you can't miss from the first bite. It's like the sauce was cooked with pepperoni juice, the pasta was boiled in hot dog water, and the cheese was spiked with celery salt. It was just too much. Funny enough, the pepperoni itself tasted less like pepperoni than everything else did, as if all of the pepperoni's flavor had leached out. So this was a fast one. For repeatability, would I eat this again? Not on your life. If you love pepperoni and want something that tastes strongly of pepperoni pizza in lasagna form, you may like this, but not me. Next was the Philly cheesesteak tater tots. I counted 10 or so tots, which is great. Most frozen meals I've tried with tater tots in them only had a few, but these weren't crispy, so they fell apart as soon as they were disturbed. They weren't mushy either. It was more like textured potatoes with big particles, like hash browns. Unlike the sloppy Joe, where no sloppy or Joe was to be found, the meat here tasted like Philly cheesesteak. The cheese even had that Velveeta texture. But again, there was a chunk of meat that wasn't properly sliced or diced, so there may be an issue with consistency as far as how the meat is chopped up and distributed. Either way, this was another fast one because this was simple. For repeatability, would I eat this again? Yes. The combination was unique in a way that I don't see myself eating often, but I did like it. And last for Fieri was the chili cheese dog tater tots, and the tots held up much better with this one. The amount of chili it had is what I expected the sloppy Joe Mac to have as far as sauced ground beef, so I think they need to go back to the drawing board on that one because I can't imagine it cost that much more to make this one than it would have cost them there if they added a little more beef. For this one though, it had big sausage slices, and again, unlike the sloppy Joe, this tasted like someone actually threw a chili cheese dog on some tots. It didn't lean as much towards that tangy, almost sweet, vinegary chili I'm used to on hot dogs. It was more like chili with spices that you eat out of a bowl, so more savory and earthy. The flavors were all good, lots of sausage, very rich cheese sauce, but it had the same problem as the pepperoni one where it started to taste like a nitrate bomb went off in my mouth. To be fair, this one isn't as extreme as that one was, and the flavor is still good, but it still leans into it enough that I feel like I shouldn't be eating it for the sake of my health. And since I don't eat hot dogs anymore anyway, there's no great loss. So I'm sure you could guess that repeatability for this one is no. Not because it isn't tasty, but because it made me feel kind of sick to eat. Also, if it looks like I was rushing with this one, it's because something flew in the window and came over to the table, and I didn't want it to land in the food because germaphobe me would have tossed it out. Getting into my final thoughts, if this were a competition, which it kind of was, at least in my head, I can definitely say Gordon Ramsay's meals blew Fieri's out of the water. I don't know how involved either one of them was in the process of developing them, but there was a clear distinction in the target palate. Ramsay's tasted like simplified frozen versions of higher quality meals you'd order at a typical restaurant. No off flavors, and the pasta was wonderful. Meanwhile, Fieri's tasted kind of like what an American stereotype of a European would think stereotypical American cuisine is made of. Overly salty, overly processed, overly high blood pressure and cholesterol-ish, aka cheap and better if you're drunk. Only it's not cheap. All of these meals were $6.99 full price, which is more than I'd personally pay for a frozen meal. I did get them on sale for $5.49, but for that amount, I'd still rather cook. And despite being the size of other frozen meals I've tried, these were almost too filling for me, which is a good thing if you're tired of TV dinners that don't satiate you, but you also don't want something overkill like a pound of Hungry Man. If you're interested, Ramsay's meals range from 310 calories to 500 and from 900 milligrams of sodium to 1560 milligrams. The sodium increased as the calories decreased. For Fieri's, they range from 440 calories to 520 and from 830 milligrams of sodium to 1840. You can pause the video to see the other nutritional facts. That's why I show the back of the boxes at the start of my reviews. Since I don't eat frozen meals all the time, I'm fine with the calories, but I am sodium sensitive, so that alone makes Fieri's line a no-go, even if I liked it more than I did. So my final verdict is that I'd recommend Gordon Ramsay's meals in general, but I'd only recommend trying Guy Fieri's meals based on your personal taste. And a sloppy Joe Mac is a great start. But let me know if you've tried any of these meals. Thanks so much for watching MBM, and I'll see you snackies when I'm backies.